Yo, what's up guys? Welcome back to another video, and today I will give one piece of advice for every NBA team entering this season. Alright, so we're going to start with the Atlanta Hawks, and my piece of advice for them is to ride John Collins. The Atlanta Hawks roster has changed extremely, and it seems like they've gotten rid of the only bright spot on that team in Dennis Schroeder. We're also very unsure of Trae Young because he is an undersized point guard for NBA standards and has high bust potential. But the one guy who stands out on that roster to me is John Collins. Collins will be going into his sophomore year and is already considered one of the most explosive finishers in the league. Not to mention that Collins had an amazing summer league, averaging 24 points per game and 8.5 rebounds per game. Collins has the ability to keep this horrible team afloat this season. For the Boston Celtics, my piece of advice is to trade your draft picks. This team has a chance to win the title this year. An injury to Steph or KD could easily make the Celtics the favorite for the championship. But you don't want to hope that something like that happens. Let's be honest, the current Celtics team won't be able to beat the Warriors and would have problems getting past the Rockets. But this team has something that others don't: draft assets. They have protected pick from Memphis and the Sacramento first round pick this year. Those picks plus someone else could be enough to get a guy like Jimmy Butler, who said he is not happy in Minnesota. Add Jimmy Butler to this team, and I think they can beat the Warriors in a 7-game series. My piece of advice for the Brooklyn Nets is to trade D'Angelo Russell or Spencer Dinwiddie. Having two great point guards on a team is never really a problem, but the Nets have three pretty good point guards. With questionable signing of Shabazz Napier, it is clear that the Nets believe Napier's breakout season last year was not a fluke. It is almost set in stone that Shabazz will be the backup point guard, so one of the others has to go. With other holes on the team that needs to be filled, it makes zero sense to keep two really good up-and-coming point guards. And with this team being a sleeper to make it in the playoffs in a weak East, they should trade for a guy that can help them win now. My piece of advice for the Charlotte Hornets is to blow the team up. This team isn't going to work. Kemba is a borderline star who can pull in a lot of value from teams looking for an elite scorer. Nicholas Batum is a serviceable two-way guard with an extremely high cap hit, but a team looking to contend would probably be willing to take on Batum's contract if it helps them win. Michael Kidd-Gilchrist isn't panning out to what we thought he was going to be. Same applies with Frank Kaminsky. But I think the rebuild in Charlotte wouldn't be as bad as it looks. If they can add 3 or 4 young prospects, this team has a chance to contend in the next few years. With Jeremy Lamb becoming an explosive finisher who can also shoot the three-pointers, and Miles Bridges, whose ceiling is through the ceiling, the Hornets already have a few young guys to start. They just need a little bit more for the rebuild. My piece of advice for the Chicago Bulls is to add defensive depth. This team is amazing on offense, maybe being a top 10 offense in the league. Lauri Markkanen, Jabari Parker, Denzel Valentine, Cameron Payne, and Zach LaVine, especially Zach LaVine, all struggle on defense. Adding Wendell Carter Jr. was a good start. He could be the paint protector, but they still need to add wing defenders. I bet they would have gone for guys like Trevor Ariza and Luke Mbah-a-Moute if they knew Jabari Parker would have joined their team. I'm very excited to watch the Bulls offensively, but it will be a nightmare defensively. My piece of advice for the Cleveland Cavaliers is to make Larry Hughes the permanent head coach. Alright, I'm just going to throw a record out there right now, 6-0. That was the Cavs record when Larry Hughes was the interim head coach while Ty Lue was taking a leave of absence. Larry Hughes is a defensive-minded coach who is a perfect fit for this team who needs help defensively. Ty Lue was hand-selected by LeBron, and as LeBron time in Cleveland comes to an end, so should Ty Lue. My piece of advice for the Mavericks is to trust your rookies. The Mavericks had one of the most interesting drafts this season. They put all their eggs in one basket by trading for Luka Doncic. There were much more safe picks in the draft, but they couldn't resist the upside that he had. They also got the steal of the draft in Jalen Brunson, who had almost the exact resume Josh Hart had entering the season. And their last pick was one of the more odd selections. They drafted Kostas Antetokounmpo, the younger brother of Giannis. Kostas has the physical tools needed to be an NBA superstar, but he lacks talent. So he's more of a project, really, but how good Jalen Brunson and Luka Doncic will do will directly correlate to how good the Mavericks do. If the rookies do good, this team has a chance to slide in the playoffs with the addition of DeAndre Jordan. All in all, the Mavericks need to trust in what they have already built up. My piece of advice for the Denver Nuggets is to not play Michael Porter Jr. Porter was seen as one of the most talented players in his class coming out of high school. He was definitely going top 3 in the draft until he got hurt. He tried to rush back and then got hurt again. This hurt his stock extremely, and the Nuggets were able to pick him up at the 14th pick. This pick is boom or bust. If Porter comes back at even 90%, then it's the biggest deal of the draft. But injuries like what Porter has takes time to heal. It is a lingering injury that, if treated correctly, can heal completely. But stuff like this needs time, and risk playing him for one season outweighs the pros of him playing. In the long haul, the Nuggets will be very happy if Porter can come back fully healthy. My piece of advice for the Detroit Pistons is to trade for Kemba Walker. The Pistons are just on the brink of being a contender in the East. Andre Drummond and Blake Griffin aren't enough to get far in the East, especially if Blake Griffin is hurt like he usually is. Besides, Griffin and Drummond, this team really doesn't have much else. They have Reggie Jackson, who hasn't reached the level of play he had in OKC. They also have Stanley Johnson, who is an outstanding wing defender but can be a liability on offense at times. Also Reggie Bullock, who is one of the best scorers on the team, but one of the least efficient at the same time. But adding a star like Kemba makes this team exponentially better. And from what we have seen from other trades like this, such as Eric Bledsoe, the asking price shouldn't be too high. For Detroit, trading for Kemba should be a no-brainer if they want to contend. My piece of advice for the Golden State Warriors is to not let DeMarcus Cousins change you. Yes, not every team is perfect, but the Warriors are the closest thing to it. With their only problems being morale and injury related, DeMarcus Cousins has been known around the league to be somewhat toxic on and off the court with some teammates. But under Steve Kerr, I don't think Cousins' ego will be too much of a problem on the selfless team. My piece of advice for the Houston Rockets is to place Carmelo Anthony off the bench. We saw the F5 tornado of a disaster that happened in OKC last year. Most of the blame lies on the shoulders of Carmelo Anthony, who said that he won't come off the bench for a team at the expense of winning. If anyone can make that work, it would be Mike D'Antoni, but he may even have problems with that. Carmelo is a scorer, not a spot-up shooter, and if he starts, he'll become a spot-up shooter. It doesn't make any sense, but earlier this year, after that dreadful season in OKC, Carmelo said he would be fine coming off the bench, but he wouldn't really like it. Carmelo off the bench would be the number one guy, and he would thrive in the D'Antoni system. And I think that Houston has a great situation right now, and unlike New York, he will have some supporting cast. Carmelo won't be the number one guy on that team, but he could be a very valuable piece to that team off the bench. My piece of advice for the Indiana Pacers is to keep making quiet, but yet very effective moves. The Pacers are flying under the radar. After taking the Cavs to Game 7, they went out and drafted Aaron Holiday, a guard who did it all at UCLA, and had one of the best signings this offseason in Tyreke Evans. Evans had a career year last year due to the fact that he was playing point guard instead of shooting guard. Evans can fit perfectly as the backup point guard for the Pacers. If the Pacers keep up the pace of great front-off decisions, they'll be contending for a championship in no time. My piece of advice for the Los Angeles Clippers is to blow the team up. This team is filled with role players. It is a well-rounded team that is lacking a superstar that could push this team to the top. Blake Griffin was traded and DeAndre Jordan left in the offseason, which marked the end of Lob City. Now all we have is a team of role players that were supposed to excel next to the main parts of Lob City. Now, they don't have someone that is a superstar. If they have written commitment from Kawhi, then of course keep the team intact, because this team plus Kawhi could be top 5 in the West. But I highly doubt he wants to go to the Clippers over the Lakers. Unlike most teams, this team has valuable pieces. Lou Williams could be a great 6-man off the bench for a contending team. Patrick Beverley makes every team better with his hustle on both sides of the court. Avery Bradley does have low value, but if we see flashes of what he was in Boston, then he is possibly the most valuable removable piece of that team. If this team can gain young assets and draft picks, they would be the most intriguing young team in the league. My piece of advice for the Los Angeles Lakers is to trade for a star. Alright, let's do a quick history lesson. Paul George. The Lakers were positive he was coming to LA this offseason, so they didn't trade for him. And the Lakers don't have Paul George. Kawhi Leonard. The Lakers are so positive Kawhi is coming to LA that they aren't going after him, and he got traded to Toronto. So, if Paul George didn't stay and went to different teams, then why would Kawhi leave his team in Toronto to go to LA? The Lakers need to take risks in order to win while LeBron is there, even if that means sacrificing their future. All the Lakers' transactions over the past few years are safe, low-risk decisions. Go after LeBron in the offseason, of course. Draft Lonzo Ball, a fan favorite, so you don't get criticized if he doesn't pan out. Trade for Josh Hart, a reigning Big East Player of the Year who somehow fell to 30 in the draft. All these easy decisions a 12-year-old could make. Use LeBron while you have him in his prime. My piece of advice for the Memphis Grizzlies is to trade Marc Gasol and Mike Conley. This team isn't working. Mike and Mark have been on the team together for about 10 years and haven't even been close to an NBA championship. The best moment in their tenure was taking a Spurs team to 7 games, then losing to them. The Grizzlies are in the no man's land of the NBA. They're good, but just not good enough. That is the position the Trailblazers has also been in. If the Grizzlies trade Mark and Mike, they officially start the rebuild they've been putting off for years. My piece of advice for the Miami Heat is to give Hassan Whiteside another chance. Before getting hurt last year, Hassan Whiteside was on track to have a pretty nice year actually. Then he got hurt and everything crumbled. The Heat wanted him to wear a splint on the floor. He didn't want to wear a splint. Then he was benched for 2 more weeks. Upon his return, he was on loaded minutes, and he didn't play in the fourth quarter as often as he would have liked. And then he complained about it to the media. After all this cleared up, Whiteside played horribly, and often hurt his team when he was on the floor. Although it seems like all the blame is on Whiteside, that doesn't take away from his talent. Hassan has been one of the more loyal pieces to this franchise, and they can't just ditch him to the curb without giving him another chance. Although Hassan can't shoot in a league full of shooters, he still holds value as a rim protector. My piece of advice for the Milwaukee Bucks is to play Thon Maker. Thon Maker is an extreme unknown. We don't know if he's 21 years old or 35 years old, but he's an athletic 7-footer who can shoot from time to time. Thon Maker plays like a poor man's point guard sometimes, often being able to drive past bigger defenders, but he is an amazing rim protector who had 5 blocks in 1 game in the playoffs. But he isn't relatively big for NBA standards. He can easily be backed down due to the fact that he's only 220 pounds. As a 7'1" guy, that is not really good. But you have to hope that he gets bigger and his talent is undeniable. This guy can ball, and although he might not be all there physically, he is all there talent-wise. My piece of advice for the Timberwolves is to move on from Tom Thibodeau. What does Karl Anthony Towns, Andrew Wiggins, and Jimmy Butler all have in common? Well, they have all publicly announced their distrust of the Timberwolves organization. Although all the blame does not lie on Thibodeau's shoulders, he is the easiest scapegoat. This is a realistic piece of advice, not an idealistic piece of advice. An idealistic piece of advice would to do a clean sweep of the development staff, training staff, coaching staff, Hell, I would even get rid of the water boy because everything the Timberwolves do is just wrong. They haven't developed Andrew Wiggins or Karl-Anthony Towns since they've come into the league. Their defense was horrible last year, and the team in general did not live up to the expectations they had entering the season. But Tom Thibodeau is an easy target, so let's go after him. My advice for the Pelicans is trade Anthony Davis. I know I'm going to catch some flack for this one, but really I don't care. I don't see the Pelicans make the playoffs this year with the current roster they have. I like Elfrid Payton as a Walmart version of Rondo, but comparing Julius Randle and DeMarcus Cousins is insane. The Pelicans were a favorable matchup to the Trailblazers, and that's why they swept them. And the Trailblazers weren't that good, as they could have fallen to the 6th seed if they had lost their last game. I think the Rondo loss being swept under the rug, but he was the leader of that team. He was the seasoned veteran who got everyone together. I don't see the team performing well, and I think that will come full circle when they realize a rebuild might be in place. But I can guarantee you the Pelicans would get a whole lot in return for AD. My piece of advice to the New York Knicks is to prepare for the 2019 offseason. The Knicks aren't really going to do anything this year. With Kristaps being out until past Christmas and no one else being there, the Knicks might end up last in the East. But New York is an attractive place for potential free agents such as Kyrie and Jimmy Butler. All the Knicks have to do this year is get their speech ready for that time. My piece of advice for the Oklahoma City Thunder is to get a sharpshooter. The problem with this team goes on and on. Another suggestion would probably be to get rid of Billy Donovan. But this team has no three-point sharpshooters, and their best is probably Alex Abrines. There should be a plethora of sharpshooters available on the market. First name that comes to my mind is Kyle Korver. Korver's not really needed anymore in Cleveland and should be traded before he reaches grandpa age. Another one is Dion Waiters, who is more of a shot creator than a catch-and-shoot guy, but he is pretty good at catch-and-shoot, but he is able to create his own shot, unlike Korver. These extra shooters should free up much-needed floor spacing for Westbrook. My piece of advice for the Orlando Magic is to use Jonathan Isaac. Jonathan Isaac was taken in last year's draft with the 6th pick by the Magic. Isaac has the physical tools of KD but can't shoot very good. Isaac was plagued with injuries as well, and when he did play, he didn't play very well, only averaging 5.4 points per game in 27 games. But one thing we saw from Isaac last year was his defense. He was a top 3 defender on the Magic and was well above average for qualified players. Isaac already has defense down, and I believe he can be a good offensive player as long as he isn't struggling with lingering injuries. I hope the Magic don't give up on him after just one poor injury-prone season. My piece of advice for the Philadelphia 76ers is pray Markelle Fultz learns how to play basketball again. Fultz is one of the more questionable players in the NBA right now. For some reason, when he came into the NBA, he forgot how to play basketball. And if Fultz shows us what he did in college, then he is a huge part of that Sixers team. He can either be one of the best players in the NBA coming off the bench, or he can play alongside Ben Simmons at the 2. Besides that, there's no other path the Sixers can take to get much better. They could try and go after Jimmy Butler, but they proved this offseason that Philly isn't the hottest landing spot for free agents, and there are much more better places that they can go. But if Fultz is healthy, this team could come out of the East this season. My piece of advice for the Phoenix Suns is to get a point guard. What is happening in Phoenix? They let Elfrid Payton walk, so their starting point guard is now Eli Odogubu.
Who is that?
And while this nightmare at the point guard position is becoming a reality, the Suns traded their young starting power forward, Marquise Chriss, for DeAnthony Melton. Okay, I am a fan of DeAnthony Melton, but he's not ready to be a starting point guard for an NBA franchise. It seems ever since they locked up Devin Booker to that contract, they just stopped trying. The signing of Trevor Ariza was one of the worst this entire offseason, but I do like the pick of Mikal Bridges. But how hard is it to bring back a great floor general in Elfrid Payton? His playstyle fits perfectly with the team, and I think they were overconfident on the point guard. Reports came out that they tried trading for Damian Lillard, Kemba Walker, and Terry Rozier, but I guess it will just be another long losing season for the Suns. My piece of advice for the Portland Trailblazers is to cross your fingers that Golden State, Houston, Utah, Oklahoma City, and the Lakers all have injury problems. After handing out so many horrible contracts, this team is stuck in the no man's land of the NBA. They're good, but they're just not good enough. They have 2 stars in Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum, and they have Jusuf Nurkic, who could be starting center for a championship team. And then, they have Evan Turner, Al-Farouq Aminu, and Zach Collins. Literally horrible. I would say to blow this team out, but they can't seem to get any good offers for Damian Lillard. So good luck, Portland, because you are really going to need it. My piece of advice for the San Antonio Spurs is to use your depth to your advantage. Besides the Celtics, the Spurs are easily the deepest team in the NBA. With key bench players such as Quincy Pondexter, Patty Mills, Jacob Total, I don't even know how to say his name, Mark Bellinelli, and Monty Walker IV, all being good, solid players who could start when they need to. If the Spurs use all their different lineups to throw off teams in the playoffs, they can cause major confusion and push their way to the NBA Finals. I really like the Spurs team, and I especially love the all-around solid team they have built. My piece of advice for the Sacramento Kings is to start Buddy Hield. Yes, Buddy Hield started the season off horribly last year, but after the All-Star break, he was a borderline All-Star. After the All-Star break, he was top 30 in 9 major statistical categories, yet he wasn't even starting. Now, with Marvin Bagley running the offense, Buddy can slide perfectly next to the floor general De'Aaron Fox and put up stellar numbers. It seems like common sense, but it's not for the Kings. Hield would only start when Bogdan Bogdanovic was hurt. Now, Buddy should excel in his increased role in the organization. My piece of advice for the Toronto Raptors is to keep Kawhi happy. Literally do anything in your power to keep him in Toronto. Give him whatever he needs, whatever he wants. I don't care what you do, just keep him in Toronto. My piece of advice for the Utah Jazz is to keep everything the same. The Jazz have been using the draft to build their team over the past few years, and it has been working. Donovan Mitchell is already an elite player entering his sophomore season, and Rudy Gobert is a top 5 center in the league, and those two are young. Joe Ingles is an awesome sidekick who is a 3-and-D small forward, and Ricky Rubio and Dante Exum are nice surprise at the point guard position who are great at defense, and Rubio is easily the best floor general in the league. Not to mention Grayson Allen, who had one of the best summer leagues out of everyone, being the rugged guard off the bench. If this team keeps doing what they're doing, they will be able to give the Warriors a run for their money in the next 2 to 3 years. And my final piece of advice is for the Washington Wizards, and that is to keep the locker room stable. The Wizards before this offseason already had one of the most toxic locker rooms in the league, and yet they added 2 players who are known to be horrible in the locker room. Those 2 players are Austin Rivers and Dwight Howard. Dwight Howard has been publicly called out by people like Kobe. I don't know who else called him out, but I know for sure Kobe called him out multiple times, and he's been considered soft by a lot of people. And Austin Rivers, who kept the Clippers from being one of the best teams in the league, as Doc Rivers wouldn't let Austin be traded in a trade that would send Carmelo Anthony, prime Carmelo Anthony, to the Clippers. So, as long as the Wizards can keep this locker room stable, I think they can actually be a pretty good team. So that's it. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Again, if you like all my videos, please subscribe down below. And if you like this video in general, please leave a like down below. Also, leave a comment down below on what you think on my thoughts about the NBA. So thank you guys for watching, and see you